I think Saints are in a spot, and Ross Lyon himself would be aware of the challenge that he has on his hands and his coaching group. They won 11 games last year, and they showed some real spark at times. I can't see them matching that this year, and I don't think they really need to be heading in the right direction. I think this for me is with their injuries, with their list status, this is a 3-year job, and they've decided to back.
So it's a rebuild.
Yeah, and I think they've decided to back a coach that they have more belief in, that they're going to get a better result at the end of that 3 years than they would have with their old one. And I reckon
he's not a rebuilding coach, though, is he? Like, he hasn't put his hand up to come back to get the elusive premiership by coming to a club that's rebuilding, surely. And the language that they use when they contracted this guy, Ratton, I'm talking of, and then sack him, and then they say our list is capable of more. So that, to me, says you've won 11, but we're now pushing for 6-4. They go and target De Goey in the off-season. If you're targeting De Goey, that's not a club that is looking to rebuild. I don't think, because De Goey, by the time they're ready to go in 3 years, is going to be into his 30s, and who knows. So their language and their actions say to me they weren't rebuilding when they thought they were going to sack Brett Ratton. Now, they may do that, and that may be the easy out for them when they realise and understand how poor they look. But at the time of making that call, I don't think they were thinking rebuild.
I'm interested to hear from any St Kilda fans through the text what they believe and what they're feeling. But I think that the list is capable of more is a corporate speak for, we don't think that this guy is going to be as good as the guy that we're going to get. I really think that the decision to re-sign Ratton and then the decision to sack him, one of those is wrong, and we'll find out. Only the fullness of time will give us those ones.
Stakes are high, though, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I think administratively and from a list management perspective that St Kilda have put themselves in a spot. I think the coaching is probably the third in that line. And all of the issues that are there, I don't think they're on Brett Ratton or his coaching group at all. But I do believe they've gone and said, we think that we need a more experienced coach, a coach who is, Brett Ratton's experienced coach, but we want a guy that we believe is going to get the best out of this group in the short term. He's going to find some diamonds in the rough. He's going to put a structure in place. It's going to have us playing better footy. But in the long term, we know that we're going to make the most of the assets that we're going to be able to give him, even though I think Ross Lyon has one hand tied behind his back going into this season.
Yeah, this isn't a criticism of Ross. This is more a decision and who they've appointed and where they thought they were at versus where they are actually at. Saints fans, you can have you say that the first 8 games without Max King are difficult. I've got them at 2 and 6. Fremantle, Western Bulldogs at Marvel, Essendon, Gold Coast, Collingwood, Carlton, Port Adelaide and North Melbourne. You may pinch Essendon, you probably pinch North Melbourne. That's 2 and 6. Some of the other observations, as we said earlier, you were at Icon Park. You took a close look at Collingwood. Their new additions, Bucks, including Tom Mitchell. What'd you see?
Yeah, well, I saw Kingy's story about Dan McStay, and I have to agree. He looks like he's going to fit in really well there forward of the ball. Last year I had a query on, I just couldn't see it happening, how you let Grundy go and then McStay comes in. And the basis of that was simply on the commitment of dollars in the cap, because at that stage Collingwood needed to shave some money off its cap. So say Grundy's on 900, they have to pay 3, and Melbourne pay 600, and then you bring McStay in for 600. That's a net. That means that the salary cap doesn't shift. The status quo is the same. So I thought there was going to have to be some give from a salary cap perspective. Now there may be a little bit of give, especially in the future, but in terms of the attributes and the strengths that each of those players bring to the table, McStay, I believe, will help. As good as Grundy is, McStay's attributes and strengths will feed into Collingwood's needs greater than Brodie Grundy would have in the next 5 years. They've got Darcy Cameron, who's come across. Mason Cox can go into the ruck. I think you can find a ruckman. I think you can find someone who will go and fill that role more readily than you're going to find someone with real aerial power and strength in front of the ball. And I think McStay, the early talk has been that his communication is first class, that he's connected with his teammates really well. He's respected already the way that he goes about it, his work ethic, etc. And that he's needed. Like, he's needed more in the Collingwood forward line than he was in the Brisbane forward line, and that for an individual counts for a fair bit as well.
So a needs selection makes Collingwood better. On the surface of it, a lot of Collingwood fans are critical of the way Grundy was treated, but one for one, that trade makes Collingwood better.
Yeah, well, I think let's put this decision side by side with the Ratton decision. I think St Kilda have made a ruthless decision against something that they decided 3 months earlier because they think there's a better option, and it looks like Brett Ratton's treated poorly. And I agree, it looks counterintuitive. Brodie Grundy was signed to a long-term deal, an expensive deal at the end of 2019 when he could have gone back to Adelaide, and potentially that wasn't the right decision. Because now you're coming around, you have to let a guy go for less than his actually market worth is, when you haven't maximised his market worth earlier in the piece. So I don't think and it looks like Brodie Grundy's been treated poorly as a result. I think in the end, organisations, sometimes you put your hand up and say, we've made an error here. It's hurting us in the long term. We've got to sacrifice the individual for the good of the team or the club in some shape or form. And we see that often, and that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect between what people think is happening and what needs to happen. And with all the information, only clubs themselves can make those calls.
What about some clubs going all in on ruckman? So Melbourne have done that, and we'll see how that plays out. Fremantle have done that. They're the two genuine ruckmen, Jackson and Darcy. There are others. I mean, Adelaide probably got Riley O'Brien and Thilthorpe who are going, they're ruckmen, really. Whereas some have gone to pick you up on that, and you're right. Well, we can probably get a ruckman, a second string ruckman from a club that isn't using him. Think Tom Hickey or Nan Curvis or someone like that, what Sydney and Richmond have done. We can get one that way if Cameron turns out to be injured or not as good as we thought. We can replace that for a small piece of the salary cap versus the clubs that have gone, here's $800 for Luke Jackson. Here's big money for Grundy. How do you see that debate?
I cannot wait to see how Melbourne handle this. I think that the amount of their cap that they've committed, I can only assume, even though that you get Brodie Grundy at, at 2/3 rent potentially,
and it's 5 years too. 5 years.
But to have Grundy and Gorn out sounds awesome. I philosophically, I don't believe that you can commit that much of your cap to the ruck role. And for Jackson and Darcy at Fremantle, I still don't believe that. And I'm really interested to see whether that comes to fruition, because ultimately you're trying to win a flag. Do you need the money that you put there? It's a little bit like the NFL. You have a quarterback, you got your blindside tackle. Where you can spend your money in different places. Where is the most important roles? I don't actually. If you had to put key defender, goal kicking midfielder, and ruckman as an example of three roles, I would have ruckman the third most important of those three. I think an intercept defender, a key defender, intercept marker is one. I think a goal-kicking midfielder is two, and I think a ruckman, as good as he may be, even the best ruckman in the comp, I'd put him at three in terms of important roles to playing winning footy.
Buck, Scott Pendlebury said in the Herald Sun yesterday in relation to Tom Mitchell, they're not expecting him to get 35 to 40 every week. They want the Tom Mitchell who dominates around the footy and he's a beast around the ball, but also puts pressure on tackles and doesn't feel like he has to be best on ground.
Yeah,
I think not Tom Mitchell, though, is it? He's not a good pressure player.
No, he's not a good pressure player, and he's not a physical player. He is a ball winner, and he is he gets inside and feeds the outside runners. So, and then that's what Pendles himself has become, as well as as his career has worn on, and as he moves into the twilight of his career, which could go on for another 8 years, for all we know.
He'll get Boomer. He'll break the game's record, I reckon.
So what's he? He's 70 odd games away. So 3 full seasons, maybe a fourth. You reckon he's going to get there?
I think he could. I think he is one player who will get really close.
Well, one thing I can guarantee is he hasn't relied on his speed, and so losing that is not going to be an issue for him. But Tom Mitchell being the subject of the discussion, I would not be expecting. I don't think we can look at Tom Mitchell and think about what he's produced throughout his career. So I think what Pendles has done is really clever. I wouldn't be expecting him to be the player that he's been in the past, and I actually wouldn't expect him to play every game this year. The Collingwood have real depth in their midfield. They don't want to get one pace. They do not want to get one pace. If Pendles is in there with Mitchell, it could get to that.
That's a risk, isn't it?
It is.
Not a lot of speed in there.
It is, but their clearance profile was not great last year. So I think he's a low cost recruit, high quality individual, high quality person. Will buy into team. And great to have there as depth. I think at the very least, his best football will help improve Collingwood and potentially in that clearance profile. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are times when he's actually not in that side on merit, given the balance of what the team needs.
Question for you, Bucks. In a scratch match on the weekend, the Western Bulldogs and the Giants didn't play. They just played a practice game against themselves. But at one end, they had Lobb, Ugle-Hagan, Norton, and Sam Darcy in the same forward line against their best defenders. That's a tall forward line. Can it work? And do you expect them to wheel that out at stages this year?
So the coach in me wants to know how often they were 4-2, 4 being the talls. If they rotated through there, they're 3-3, and then that's doable. Ugle-Hagan moves around pretty well. Lobb moves around pretty well. I mean, Darcy's a big unit, but yeah, they're going to worry a few in the air if they run with that type of forward line, but I wouldn't be expecting them to be able to lock the ball in the front half too much. It would be probably a bit of bounce, yeah.
But it would it's something. It's a good look. Like I just think.
Well, it's rags to riches, isn't it? The Dogs have struggled for a long time to, seemingly to be able to find keys either in front or behind that they can build their side around. Now, Norton's done a fantastic job, but they've sort of always, think of the Dixons, the mid-size sort of forward that's played the role and been expected to be a contender aerially, but they've just been so good on the ground. So in the end, they've got a choice. They've got an embarrassment of riches there, it seems, of players that can play those roles. I don't see them all in the same side. Josh Bruce was a key to the forward half of the Dogs in a very good season in 21. So to miss with an ACL after that, and then try to be to reinvent him as a defender, it really is filling that key defensive spot that they've needed. But Liam Jones is the one for me. I mean, how he comes back off. Out of the wilderness, I suppose, missing a lot of footy and then coming back. But he's at his best, and if he can bring his strengths to the table, he's definitely someone you can build that back line around as well.
Questions without notice, Bucks, Oscar Allen.
Yeah, massive rap. They've lost a champion in Josh Kennedy, and I reckon this kid at 23, he played 0 games of football. What do you see in him, and what... is he in your eyes? Is he an A grader, B grader? Where do you think we will be viewing him in a couple of years?
I think he's an A grader. I was a little bit critical of the way that West Coast used him in the 2021 season. It was a stopgap. He's had such a presence as a forward, but because of Darling and Kennedy and some injuries that they had to their key position players in the ruck and back, they moved him all over the place, and I just thought it stifled his development a little bit, but there's points there that he's looked like the best young key forward in the game. So hopefully the service is there for him. I think he can kick 40 to 45 this year, which would be a significant result.
I think he's out and out star. I reckon to miss last year was, everything went wrong for West Coast. To see that squad and to see them only win 2 games of footy, you just, and I know you were really strong on it. It made no sense at all. And if that was a Melbourne team, they would have. I can only imagine the scrutiny they would have been under over there. But Adam Simpson has got had got such credits as a coach, and the way he carries himself. I'm an admirer from afar of the way that he goes about his business, and he needed to somehow cobble and pull together and keep that club together. But Oscar Allen alone coming back into that side is worth multiple wins. I think he's an out-and-out star. In 12 months' time, at the end of this season, I believe that he will be in the conversation with the best forwards in the game. Absolutely.
In the conversation for All-Australian, you think, or squad?
Well, I think at his best, he should. I think he'll win multiple All-Australian berths. You need to be on the end of some good service to do that as much as. But I just think he's a 6'6", 97 kilograms. I think he's got real aggression at the air. He's good on the ground. He's a smart player. I think he's going to be one that really comes through this year as an unexpected gun of the competition.
Gary and Tim had Tom Atkins on last week. Might have been last Wednesday or Thursday. It was terrific. And then on the back of it, they were discussing, and Gary's had a plea for the art of coaching is to identify a player who might be better or add something different to your team if they move positions. And it was fascinating. I thought it was just inside the mind of what coaching is. What do you consider when thinking about a player moving positions? Like, is it something that just might hit you at 2 a.m. and you wake up and go, maybe I'll try him there? Or does it take an assistant coach to come and tap you on the shoulder and walk into your office? Does it take the player to come in and suggest it? Or is it a combination of all those things and then you work out and you trial it at training and see if it works?
Well, it can be as simple as injuries in one particular part of the field. So you need to find someone from another. And generally, what you want as a coach is a massive competitor, someone who works hard, who gives their best, who has strengths that they can add to the team. And when you already have those building blocks of that, your commitment to the team, a hard worker, and a professional, someone who is working to be rewarded and find their next chance, you can find different roles and opportunities for them around the field. Liam Baker's the one that stands out to me.